Welcome to the Book Party Podcast.
Join us as we journey into the world of books with Michael T.
Prepare to be captivated by engaging interviews, insightful discussions, and fascinating stories. You'll discover new adventures and gain insight into the creative process of the authors themselves as they share their struggles and accomplishments. Now let's hear from Michael T.
This is Michael T., and welcome to the Book Party Podcast, where we explore the transformative power of parenting and holistic child development. Today, we have a truly remarkable guest with us, author and licensed mental health counselor, Laurie A. Couture. She's the brilliant mind behind the groundbreaking book, Nurturing and Empowering Our Sons. Laurie A. Couture is not just an author, she's a pioneer in healing developmental trauma and attachment issues in children and youth. She brings a wealth of knowledge to our discussion today with over 25 years of experience in behavioral health care, foster and adoption social work, juvenile justice, education, and consulting. Laurie's holistic approach, known as the Couture Protocol, incorporates neuro-somatic trauma treatment, attachment parenting, alternative education, and ancestral nutrition to address the complex needs of children and their families. She's a passionate advocate for preventing behavioral health problems, violence, and suicide in boys and young men by focusing on meeting their childhood development needs and healing developmental trauma. Laurie's personal journey, including losing her son Brycen, adds a profoundly emotional and profound dimension to her work today. Laurie Couture will take us on a journey through her enlightening book, Nurturing and Empowering Our Sons. We'll delve into our sons' challenges today and explore holistic solutions and insights she offers to nurture their optimum health development. So if you're a parent, grandparent, educator, or simply someone concerned about the well-being of boys and young men in our society, you won't want to miss this episode. Stay tuned for an eye-opening conversation with Laurie A. Couture. Laurie, why don't you take it from here, fill in the blanks a bit, and tell our listeners about yourself.
Hi there. Yes, I am Laurie A. Couture, as you said, and I am the author of 2 books. The first was Instead of Medicating and Punishing, that focused on basically nature-based, just was released this year. 2023 is Nurturing and Empowering Our Sons. And I focused on boys because I saw with my 25-year career that boys were crumbling and faltering and withering in every aspect of their development in every one of our society's institutions, and their needs were not being met. Their cries were falling on deaf ears, as to quote my son. And also, none of our society's institutions were responding, except with punishments, drugs, and labels. So that is why I felt I needed to get that second book done. And then later on, well, there were additional reasons why I needed to finish that project after losing my son, and I can get into that later on in our interview.
Well, on your publishing journey, did you go the self-publishing route or the finding an agent and agency route or something kind of in between? How did you do this?
Well, with my second book, Michael, I did hybrid publishing, which is, I highly recommend it. It was the best of both worlds for me because with hybrid publishing, you have the freedom of being self-published, freedom of the self-published author to do whatever you want. You control your book. but you also have all the support and amenities of a traditional publisher. So I had the best of both worlds, all the support with the technical aspects that I needed help with, like, say, typesetting, formatting, and producing a beautiful finished product. But I got the freedom to write what I wanted without censorship and to include what I wanted in the book.
I can agree with one thing. If you go to a standard publisher, it almost feels like your book is taken over and you lose what you wanted to say completely because they start to take over your book and change things into what they want it to say. And I've seen that happen quite a bit. Plus, it can take years for your book to get published instead of either being self-published or hybrid published. I can agree with that.
Yes, you're correct on both of those.
So take us to a point of what you would consider probably your worst author moment so that we can expand on that maybe and get some lessons learned.
Well, I would say that the biggest moment with the writing process was after I completed the actual writing of the book. And then I knew I had to compile my thousands of resources into a bibliography. I found out after the fact, after I had already done thousands of citations, that there in the 2020s are now tools such as Zotero and EndNote, where you can type in your citations and they will create a bibliography for you at the end. Well, when I last needed to produce a large bibliography, which was in graduate school in the 90s, those tools didn't exist. And so I wasn't aware that as I was writing my book and plugging all my citations in as I was writing, I had no idea that if I had just had one of those tool platforms, I could have been plugging the citations into the platform tool, and they would have produced the whole bibliography for me at the end, and I would have only needed to edit little mistakes in that. But what ended up happening, Michael, was I didn't do that. I didn't know those tools existed, and I ended up having to do the entire bibliography myself. I actually had two people helping me. One was my mom, who is meticulous to detail, and then I hired another person to help me compile all those citations into the bibliography. It was a full year project. Platforms to see if I could reverse engineer it and do it in reverse and say, can I plug in these citations now after the fact? And they said, no, that would take you extra long. You might as well just do the bibliography. So hindsight is a virtue. So I didn't know that, and I wish I had known that. But you know what? I learned a lot of lessons in patience while having to spend a full year working on the bibliography of probably thousands of citations. I never sat down and counted them, but it was well over 1,000.
What a lot of work. Wow. That's terrible. So why don't you take us to a point, let's flip the coin a little bit. Take us to a point where, I call it an epiphany point, where you could have been doing anything except your writing. You could have been driving, cooking, working something else, or sleeping. And all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off in your head, and it's oh wow, or an epiphany moment where you had to grab a piece of paper and a pen and just write it down right now so you don't lose the thought. Have you had a moment like that or more?
Well, Michael, I always do stop and write down the thoughts. In fact, it's really funny. I have my Kleenex boxes like in the car and around the house. Well, actually, I have notes all over them when I can't get to my project notebooks. But the crucial epiphany moments, there were two of them with this second book, Nurturing and Empowering Our Sons. The first was that I knew I actually had started writing the book in 2011, but at the time, my son's projects and his endeavors were so intense that I really wanted to put that aside so that I could focus on his endeavors, because that was crucial at the time. And so I put the book off until 2016, and it came to a point where I felt almost like this humanitarian crisis burning inside of me, that at this point, the time is right. And I just realized it's now or never. And my best friend helped me put together a Patreon page, and I ended up realizing I'm going to have to take a sabbatical like I did for my first book. And so I literally wrote a letter to every professional I knew that had some interest in children's rights. And it was interesting because I got the holy grail response was from a private philanthropic family who had some beautiful experiences as a result of reading my first book. And they decided that they were going to sponsor my sabbatical to write the book. And so they sponsored me through the completion of writing the book and completing the bibliography, which was wonderful. And I knew that if I didn't jump through that window when I had the opportunity, then I may not have ever started the book, because a year later into writing it, my son tragically took his life. And so thank goodness I had started the book. And what was important about it is my son Brycen wanted me to write the book because he wanted me to partially tell his story in addition to writing a book that was professional. But he had told me, Mom, I want you. And he had said this to me at other times too, but he reiterated it to me at age 23. Mom, I want you to share any part of my story, and you have my permission to do so, as long as it's to help other children. And so, of course, as a mom, you don't want to share everything, as a parent, because it's like, well, anybody could read this. But after my son died, I was like, no, I'm going to share it all, everything he would want me to share. So the second epiphany moment happened after Brycen died. I obviously collapsed. I collapsed. I didn't want to live because I not only lost my son, but my granddaughter, who was born after my son's death, was completely erased from our family. And that was something my son had feared before he died. And it did come to fruition. And so after losing my son to suicide and due to his trauma history, and then losing my granddaughter to alienation, I completely had a collapse. I didn't want to go on. I didn't see a purpose in it. And I was literally lying on the ground over my son's grave, wishing I could just absorb into the ground and crawl in there with him. And I suddenly had that epiphany moment. I don't know if it was God or my son. I'm sure it was a combination of both. And I realized I have to complete this book. This book is going to tell my son's story and honor him. This book is going to help humanity. This book is going to answer the need of all of the children, boys and girls, that I have worked with, because what is being done to boys also affects girls negatively too. And I knew I had to at least agree with God that I was going to finish the book. And how I ended up being able to get my passion for writing again is I actually had to set up a chair at my son's headstone. And I took my project notebook that I do all my notes and everything in. And I started drawing pictures and symbols to symbolize what I wanted to say, but I just didn't have the words yet. And so I did that for a period of time, a period of weeks, until finally, bam, the dam broke and the words started to pour forth again. And I, through the passion and love for my son and for my granddaughter, I knew I had to get the book out. And I knew it was also something that can be given to my granddaughter to someday so she can understand her dad. If for some reason I'm not here by the time I get to see her, hopefully I will be. But if I'm ever not, the book will be something she can always access.
Exactly. Well, let's flip the coin again and go to today. What is the one thing that you are the most fired up about or excited about right now, today?
Right now, today, I think it's still sharing my son's story, as well as sharing nature's wisdom about holistic parenting with parents and professionals. That is still sustaining me to this day.
Now, this is Michael T. We invite you to go to the bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab on top, scroll down to the icon of your choice, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey, where you can download and follow us there. Please leave a review. And please don't forget to sign up for our weekly video newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Laurie, we are entering the lightning round, where we have 4 pointed questions for 4 pointed answers. So before you became an author, what was holding you back from becoming an author in the first place?
Time and money to take a sabbatical. That was the case for both books.
Once you started writing, what was the best advice you had ever received?
To be warm and compassionate.
Share with our listeners one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
I read, write, and research incessantly, and I'm always seeking to disprove myself and improve myself in doing so, and I'm pretty tenacious about it.
Okay, well now, Laurie, we're going to go ahead and get into the grand finale. So what I'd like you to do is take your time and tell our listeners all about your book.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Wow. Our boys and young men have been crying out to us for help. But their cries don't look like, falling down and skinning a knee and crying on the ground. Their cries are in the form of all of the ways that I call nature's alarms that signal their distress. Behavioral acting out, learning and emotional problems, behavioral addictions to video games and self-harm, chemical addictions to drugs, alcohol, the failure to launch that we've seen so much in our millennial and Gen Z sons, gender dysphoria, apathy, violence and criminal behavior, and tragically suicide as well. So my book takes parents by the hand through quite an incredible journey to discuss the socio-political, digital, neurochemical, and endocrine dangers that are hijacking our son's holistic well-being. And I walk parents through nature's principles, what I call nature's intent, and the actions, advocacy, and treatments that parents can take that are aligned with nature's intent that can actually help their sons heal. My book provides the puzzle pieces, the insights and solutions that are missing from other books about boys. I get right into the root of the problem that actually starts in utero and the messages that parents absorb. I shift the problem from the focus being on boys being the problem to our society being out of alignment with nature's intent for boys' optimal development. I tackle all kinds of topics that society wants to deny, such as male body shaming, male victims of sexual assault, psychiatric drugging of boys with the label ADHD, especially sexism against males, the male suicide epidemic, the harm of circumcision, and so much more. My book covers the historical, anthropological, scientific, socio-political, and current topics pertaining to our sons. It's packed with resources, graphics, citations, case examples, photographs, insights, and interviews from my son, Brycen, who was an extreme child trauma victim who succumbed to suicide. He had suffered rape and sexual assault in up to 15 different foster and residential group home placements. This book advocates for attachment parenting, homeschooling, unschooling, alternative education, neuro-somatic trauma treatments such as EMDR and other adjunct therapies, Paleolithic and other ancestral nutritional interventions. I offer opportunity, so many, packed with opportunities for family fun and community involvement. And my book covers boys ages pre-birth to mid-20s, boys that have mild behavioral issues or behavioral health care issues, moderate, severe, or even extreme behavioral health care issues and learning problems. I also include a special chapter for guiding the behavioral needs of special needs sons without using behavioral modification techniques. So my book is absolutely packed. It is huge. My son would have called it a tome because of its size, but don't let the size intimidate you because it is meant to be read in small doses. Everything is broken down by very small sections within chapters, subheadings, and headings, and it's meant to be read a little bit at a time. And if you sit down and you read a little bit every day, you'll probably finish the book in a year if you read slow. And, it took me, I read it fast because I had to read it so many times, but it still took me, like a couple months to read it through. But I am telling you, I am not exaggerating or trying to be overshooting when I say this book will save your son's life if your son has any propensity towards any proclivity towards self-harm or, this book is, I'm not making a claim about that, but the information in the book, if parents use it and apply it, is potentially life-saving. If your son has any proclivity towards depression, anxiety, self-harm, substance use, behavioral addiction, or if your son is doing well and you're just concerned about the environments that he is in, and that especially the school environment is not meeting his needs. I do hope you will check it out and recommend it to parents and professionals who need it, because I'm telling you, this information is, you're not going to hear it from your typical community mental health therapist, from your doctor, or from most professionals. And that's why I wrote the book, because boys were not being championed or their needs addressed by any of our society's institutions. And if anything, the mental health field is moving in the opposite direction of shaming boys and young men and advocating for interventions, if you will, that actually are developmentally harmful to children, especially to boys and young men. Michael?
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm listening. I'm right here. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay,
I finished.
Laurie, we thank you so much for being here today and opening up to us, and I am sure our listeners appreciate this too. Again, this is Michael T. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab, scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey. You can download and follow us there, and please leave a review. Don't forget to sign up for our weekly video newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. That brings us to the end of another enlightening episode. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Laurie A. Couture and found her insights into nurturing and empowering our sons inspiring and thought-provoking. Nurturing and Empowering Our Sons is available now on Amazon. Book Party Podcast is owned and operated by MTM Legacy Publishing, LLC. This is Michael T. and signing off.
You must not miss our next episode as we delve into a world of inspiration, entertainment, and thought-provoking insights. Join Michael T. on the next Book Party Podcast and experience a new adventure, a new story, and a complete immersion into the world of Pages Unveiled, Chronicles of the Writing Journey.